My parents said I'd regret marrying a single mom, then invited me home to meet my real match, so I left and adopted her son instead. I'm a 35-year-old man who grew up in a small, close-knit town where everyone knew everyone else's business. It was the kind of place where people still waved at their neighbors from front porches, and Sunday potlucks were the week's main event. But the town was slowly fading, and deep down, I always knew I had to get out. I'd always been drawn to photography, but my parents expected me to stay and help my dad and older brother on the family farm. Don't get me wrong, I love our farm, and I practically grew up on horseback. But no matter how much I loved the land, something always felt missing. I was content, but never completely fulfilled. My older brother, Alan, who's 3 years older than me, was the only one who truly listened. I remember when he left for college, he worked part-time and saved just enough to buy me my first camera. I was overjoyed. I carried that camera everywhere, snapping pictures of anything that caught my eye. It's still one of my most treasured belongings. I was a strata student in high school and also played football, so getting into college with a scholarship was a breeze. I continued playing football in college, and that's how I met Alina. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Blonde hair, striking blue eyes, and a smile that could brighten even the darkest room. She was a cheerleader, always present. At every game I played, we were both shy, so it took time for us to talk. But once we did, we discovered a shared love for photography. That common passion laid the foundation for our friendship and, eventually, our love story. When I finally gathered the courage to ask Alina on a real date, she was hesitant at first, but she said yes. I was over the moon. I carefully planned every detail of our first date, wanting it to be perfect for this extraordinary woman who had completely captured my heart. I took Alina to a charming little Italian restaurant tucked away in the heart of the city. The soft candlelight created a cozy, warm atmosphere. Sitting across from her, a mix of nerves and excitement filled the air. I couldn't take my eyes off her smile. The sparkle in her eyes under the candlelight tit was all mesmerizing. We laughed, shared stories, and indulged in our favorite Italian dishes. Her initial hesitation seemed to melt away as the night went on. She told me about her childhood, her dreams, and the journey that brought her to the same city where fate brought us together. It was a night of genuine connection and beautiful discovery. After dinner, we decided to take a slow walk through a nearby park. As we strolled, Alina finally shared a secret she had kept from everyone in college. With a trembling voice, she revealed that she was a single mother. Her son, Harry, was just 2 years old. She got pregnant at 16, back when she was with her high school boyfriend, Nick. At first, she thought Nick would be happy about the pregnancy, but he wasn't. He chose to walk away. Despite everything, Alina loved her baby deeply and chose to keep him. Thankfully, her parents supported her decision. Nick's parents agreed to provide child support every month, and Alina vowed never to contact Nick again. She told me all this with tears welling in her eyes. She explained that this was why she hadn't gone on a single date in the past 2 years. She kept to herself and guarded her heart. But now, she had chosen to open up to me so I could decide whether or not I wanted to continue seeing her. As she finished her story, I could see the pain in her eyes, the weight of the secret she'd carried alone for so long. And in that moment, watching her brace for my reaction, I felt nothing but admiration for the woman standing before me. Without hesitation, I reached for her hand. I told her how much I respected her honesty and that her past didn't change how I felt about her at all. Her strength only deepened my admiration for her. When I spoke those words, I saw a wave of relief and gratitude wash over Alina's face. She hadn't expected such an understanding response, and I could feel that burden she carried ease at least a little. That first date became a treasured memory, the start of our love story that would unfold over the years. I truly didn't care that she had a child. In fact, I believed that if Alina was this sincere and genuine, her child had to be just as special. We continued dating, and after 6 months, she introduced me to her parents. They welcomed me with open arms, offering the same warmth and kindness that Alina herself exuded. It didn't take long for me to feel like part of their family. We'd share stories over homemade meals, and I began to see where Alina got her strength and gentle nature. That was also when I met Harry for the first time, her sweet 2-year-old. When he waddled into the room with wide, curious eyes, my heart instantly melted. Alina introduced us, and I just knew my life was about to shift forever. I won't lie, I'd always dreamed of becoming a father. And when Harry held my hand in his tiny fingers and looked up at me with innocence and trust, I fell for him just as I had for Alina. I couldn't understand how anyone could walk away from him. But I knew then that if I wanted to be part of Alina's life, I had to step up. Alina never once asked me to help with Harry. She already had her family supporting her. But I loved spending time with him anyway. He had the most infectious smile, and just being around him made me forget about everything stressful in my life. Alina and I had a beautiful relationship. She always encouraged me to chase my dreams. I ended up joining the photography club in college, which opened a world of opportunities for me. Balancing the club with my classes and daily football practice wasn't easy, but in the long run, it paid off. I met creative, passionate people there, some of whom I'm still close with today. Eventually, when my parents visited me in college, I took the chance to introduce them to Alina. I wanted them to see for themselves how incredible she was. At first, they were friendly and seemed to enjoy her company. But during a private moment, I told them about Harry, and their reaction wasn't what I'd hoped for. They were stunned. My mom asked if I was really dating a single mother while still in college, and I said yes. My dad couldn't believe it either and asked if I was serious. I told them both, calmly and firmly, that I loved Alina and I loved Harry. And it didn't matter to me that she was a single mom. She was so much more than that. I wanted to take care of both of them for the rest of my life. Understandably, they tried to talk me out of it. They questioned my judgment, urged me to think it through. But I didn't waver. I stood by my decision, and eventually they backed off, probably assuming this was just a phase, as my mother called it. After graduating college, I took a bold step and accepted a photography internship. My parents were completely against the idea. My dad even told me photography seemed too girly to take seriously. I chuckled and tried to explain that photography had always been my true passion. They kept discouraging me, but when I landed the internship, there wasn't much they could do to stop me. Alina, on the other hand, supported me unconditionally. She believed in me, encouraged me, and helped me take that leap of faith. Even Alan, my older brother, was happy for me. By then, he was married and had moved back to the farm. He always felt at home working with our father and clearly enjoyed caring for the land and animals. My dad took great pride in Alan. He was the son who stayed, the one who carried on the family legacy with devotion. My parents admired his loyalty and felt accomplished, knowing one of their sons had followed their path. They never resented me, not openly. But I could sense a quiet disappointment whenever I brought up photography. I wasn't like Alan, and while they never said it, the contrast between us hung in the air. Still, they never held it against me. They simply hoped I'd find my own way, one that would make sense for me. During my photography internship, I was thrown into a whirlwind of intense learning and creativity. The long hours pushed me to refine my shots and challenged me to tell compelling stories through my lens. That experience truly tested my dedication, but it was incredibly rewarding. As the internship ended, I was both surprised and thrilled when the company offered me a full-time position as their photographer. This new chapter opened a world I'd only dreamed about. I traveled to breathtaking places, capturing beauty in ways I never imagined. Every new city, every culture, every landscape became a canvas for my camera. I absorbed it all with wonder, and for the first time in my life, I felt deeply fulfilled, like I was exactly where I was meant to be. But that happiness came with challenges. My work kept me so busy that Alina and I were basically in a long-distance relationship for 3 years. Still, we made it work. I visited her and Harry whenever I had the chance. Alina had found a great job as an accountant and was doing well. The distance wasn't easy, but our bond never wavered. And that's what I've always loved about her. She never resented me for chasing my dream. She never doubted me not, even when I was thousands of miles away. When I finally landed a high-paying job that allowed me to settle down, I knew it was time to propose. Before I did, I asked Elena's parents for their blessing. I'd known them for years, and I didn't want to be disrespectful. They were overjoyed when I told them. They couldn't wait for me to officially join their family. But when I shared the news with my parents, the reaction was the complete opposite. My mother was stunned and immediately launched into a rant about how immature I was for marrying a single mother. My dad bluntly told me I was making the worst mistake of my life. He said I should find a woman I could have my own children with, not raise someone else's. They told me I'd be stuck with Alina forever, that she had somehow trapped me into raising her child because his real father walked away. Hearing those things broke my heart. I couldn't believe that's how they saw the woman I loved. Still, I stood my ground. I reminded them how I'd spent the last 3 years working hard, traveling the world and building a career as a photographer. And through all of it, Alina had stood by me. She never pushed me to propose. She never once asked me to take care of Harry. That choice was mine. I wanted to be a part of their lives, and now I couldn't imagine life without them. My parents didn't like my answer. They tried to involve Alan and his wife, hoping they could change my mind. To his credit, Alan didn't fully take their side, but he didn't support me either. He called it a heavy responsibility. His wife, however, joined my parents in trying to convince me to reconsider. She even offered to introduce me to her friends, saying I had better options than Alina. The frustration became too much. I felt cornered, ganged up on by the very people I thought would support me. I walked out, angry and hurt. Despite all that, I went ahead and proposed to Alina. Her eyes filled with tears as she said yes. That moment, her smile, the joy on her face, remains etched in my memory as the happiest day of my life. From the beginning, I was honest with Alina about my family's disapproval. She was sad, but being the kind and understanding soul she is, she said she could see where they were coming from. Then, in the most selfless way, she told me it wasn't too late. It could still walk away if I thought the pressure from my family would hurt our relationship, but I told her no. My decision was final. I wasn't going anywhere. I would never leave her and Harry, not until my last breath. Still, my family kept calling, hoping to change my mind. I tried again and again to help them see things from my perspective, to get them to respect my choice. But they refused. They believed Alina was wrong for me, no matter what I said. During one particularly heated call, my mother told me they wouldn't come to our wedding if I went through with it. I stayed calm and told her that was her choice. I would understand if they didn't attend the most important day of my life, so Alina and I chose to get married at the courthouse. We knew my family wouldn't be there, so there was no reason for a big ceremony. Her parents stood proudly by our side, offering their support and love. Since we hadn't drained our savings on a large wedding, we were able to afford a home together. It wasn't easy, but we worked hard and made our dream come true. Waking up beside my wife every morning became the most comforting and beautiful feeling I'd ever known. Harry, now 5, filled our lives with endless joy. He was a bundle of energy, curious, full of laughter, and always up to something. Watching him grow and being part of the family we were building brought me a kind of happiness I never thought possible. Despite the hardships we had faced, the love we shared as a family made every struggle worth it. After marrying Alina, I chose to distance myself from my parents. I needed to protect my peace and avoid their constant negativity. My happiness now centered around Alina, Harry, and her parents. Work was steady, life was calm, and everything felt exactly as I had always hoped it would be. But then, last week, something unexpected happened. My brother, who hadn't contacted me in a long time, called. Seeing his name on my screen startled me, and for a moment I hesitated to pick up, but thinking it could be urgent. I answered. He began the call by telling me how much he missed me and apologized for not reaching out sooner. I was caught off guard. Alan wasn't the emotional type. I asked if everything was okay. That's when he told me our parents wanted to invite Alina and me back to the farm in an effort to patch things up. I was stunned. I never thought that day would come. He asked if it was all right for our mother to speak with me, then handed her the phone. Her voice carried a strange mix of nervousness and a tinge of desperation. She said she wanted to repair our broken relationship and insisted that the whole family wanted to see me and Alina at the farm. As she spoke, I felt torn. Part of me was deeply skeptical. Was this really about reconciliation, or just another chapter of family manipulation? My mother insisted they were truly sorry and were reaching out in good faith. Caught in a tangle of emotions, I paused. The pain from the past was still raw, and going back felt risky. Still, another part of me craved resolution. Maybe this was a chance to heal the damage we'd carried for so long. Taking a deep breath, I thanked her for calling and told her Alina and I would come by that weekend. We left Harry with Elena's parents and flew to my hometown. When we arrived at the farm, my parents welcomed us warmly. They hugged Alina and greeted me with open arms. Alan and his wife joined us, and for a moment, everything felt whole again. But as I turned toward the living room, confusion took over. We were met with a room full of familiar faces, sex-tended family, and close friends. I turned to my parents, puzzled, and they told me they had invited a few people to give me a proper welcome home. I nodded and began greeting everyone. That's when my mother, wearing a strange little smile, pulled me aside and introduced me to a woman named Gigi. I was confused. Why was I being introduced to someone at what was supposed to be a family reunion? Then my mother explained. Gigi was the daughter of her high school best friend and had recently gone through a divorce. I nodded awkwardly, unsure of where this was going. But then my mother continued, saying she thought Gigi and I would make a lovely couple and that we should exchange numbers. I stared at her, dumbfounded. This was no innocent gathering. It had a hidden purpose. My parents had invited me here with the hope of introducing me to someone new. I asked my mother why she was doing this, knowing full well that I was married. Just then, my dad, who must have overheard us, stepped in and said he needed to speak with me privately. Reluctantly, I followed them into another room, leaving Alina behind to endure the awkward stares and whispers of the guests once inside. They dropped the act. "Mark, we've arranged this meeting because we believe it's time for you to reconsider your marriage to Alina," my father said, as if he was making a business proposal. I was speechless. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They went on to justify their decision, insisting that Gigi, with her familiar upbringing and background, was a far more suitable match. She was someone they could proudly approve of, unlike me, since I already had a child with another man. "But I love Alina," I said firmly. "We're married, we're building a life together. What made you even think introducing me to Gigi was a good idea?" I was struggling to process the sheer absurdity of the situation. My mother, completely unfazed. insisted they were only looking out for my happiness, and claimed I'd thank them one day for helping me escape my current life. My father chimed in, saying that since Gigi was divorced, she wouldn't mind marrying me if I could just get a quick divorce from Alina. I stared at them for a few seconds in disbelief. Then I started laughing, not out of humor, but because it was all so ridiculous, it felt like something out of a bad soap opera. I couldn't believe this was happening in real life. My parents had brought me here under the pretense of reconciliation, only to push their own agenda to convince me to leave the love of my life and marry someone else just because they didn't approve of my choice. And the worst part, they actually believed I could be persuaded. My dad, now clearly on the defensive, tried to justify everything. He said they had discussed it with my brother and his wife, and that everyone agreed I had made a huge mistake by marrying Alina. That was the final straw. Though I usually try to stay calm, my patience snapped. I couldn't contain my anger any longer. I raised my voice and told them just how hurtful and humiliating their plan was. I made it clear that I was done hoping they'd ever change. That was my breaking point. I walked outside, where I found Alina quietly chatting with some of my relatives. I leaned in and whispered that we needed to leave right now. She looked stunned, but she saw the seriousness in my face and didn't question me. Alan and his wife tried to stop us, saying we should stay, but I didn't even acknowledge them. I was furious that my own brother had known about this whole scheme and said nothing. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I quietly rescheduled our flight and we left. On the plane, I told Alina everything that had happened behind closed doors. She was as shocked and disgusted as I was. She couldn't believe how low my parents had stooped, trying to manipulate me into divorcing her. Since that weekend, my phone has been flooded with calls and messages from my parents and brother. Alan believes I shouldn't have raised my voice, saying I need to be a better son and that my parents know what's best for me. According to him, I should have at least listened. But how do you justify yelling at your parents for trying to break up your marriage? How do you forgive being guilt-tripped into abandoning your wife and child just because your family doesn't approve? Thank you to everyone who showed us support during this time. The overwhelming consensus is that my parents were completely out of line, and that means a lot to me. The reason I initially felt guilty about yelling and walking out is because, as the youngest in the family, I've never truly stood up to my parents before. I always tried to respect their wishes, even when I disagreed. I knew they didn't like my wife, but I accepted that. What I never expected was for them to go so far as to arrange another woman for me, hoping I'd abandon my family. That was beyond disrespectful. What hurt even more than my parents' betrayal was realizing my brother, Alan, was part of it. We were close growing up. He always encouraged me to chase my dreams. I never thought he'd stand against my marriage. Honestly, it's his silence that stings the most. He could have warned me. He could have pulled me aside and said something, anything. Instead, he stayed quiet and let it all unfold. I'm planning to call him tomorrow, once I've cooled off and can talk without the heat of anger clouding everything, as promised. Here's the follow-up. I texted Alan and asked him to call me when he had time. He spends most of the day working the farm, so I didn't expect an immediate response. He called me that evening. I didn't beat around the bush. I asked him directly if it was true. Had he known about the plan all along? To my disappointment, he admitted that he did. He said he thought Gigi was a great woman and believed I could be happy with her if I gave her a chance. I told him how disgusted and hurt I was. How wrong it was for the entire family to treat Alina and me this way when we've done absolutely nothing to deserve it. Alan responded by saying that everyone in the family loves me and just wants me to be happy. So I asked him directly, "What made you think I wasn't happy with Alina?" Alan paused for a moment and then finally said, You need to understand that Harry will never truly be your son. You should think about starting your own family with someone like Gigi so that our legacy and traditions can continue through your bloodline." I was stunned. Couldn't believe those words came from my brother. It was clear he had been completely swayed by our parents' expectations. As their golden son, the one who always followed the rules and stayed close to home, Alan was doing everything to earn their approval. So when I went against their wishes and married someone they disapproved of, Alan couldn't understand. It didn't fit the mold he believed in. We went back and forth, arguing, but eventually it became painfully clear he wasn't going to support my marriage. He told me to think about their side, to consider the consequences of my choices, and how they might damage the family's future. Feeling utterly betrayed and heartbroken, I ended the call. I won't lie, cried after hanging up. I never imagined that one day my own brother would treat me, Elena, and Harry with such cruelty. If my entire family, including Alan, felt this way about my marriage, then I had to accept the truth. They would never change. I couldn't keep subjecting Elena and Harry to this toxic cycle. I have never, not for a second, regretted marrying Elena. And now, Tia, I knew what I had to do. I needed to let go of those who refused to be part of our life. Harry deserves to grow up surrounded by love, acceptance, and support. Nothing less, thanks to everyone who's continued to offer support. This post seems to have gained a lot of attention, and I've been getting messages asking for another update. So here it is. It's been 5 months since everything happened. And life has been a lot more peaceful since I cut contact with my family. Recently, I made a decision I've been thinking about for a long time. I want to adopt Harry legally. I want there to be no question in anyone's mind that he is my son. Last week, I sat down with Elena and her parents and shared my decision. The smiles on their faces said everything. They were fully supportive, and it was one of the most heartwarming moments of my life. Harry's biological father, Nick, has never been involved, not once, since his birth. Though Nick's parents continue to send monthly child support, they've never played any role in Harry's life. The legal process will take time and might have its hurdles. But I've been there for Harry every step of the way. I've watched him grow, helped him learn, loved him like he was my own since the day I met him. And I can't wait for the moment when the law reflects what I've always known in my heart. He's my son. As for my parents, they've never apologized. Not once. Not even acknowledged how hurtful and disgraceful their behavior was when they tried to destroy my marriage. After my final conversation with Alan, I sent a message to our family group chat. I told them I couldn't take the drama or emotional manipulation anymore. I wished them well, made it clear not to contact me again, and left it at that. In response, my mother sent a spiteful message, threatening to cut me out of their will if I didn't come to my senses. I didn't reply, because honestly, I don't care. They can leave everything to Alan and his family. I have what I need, and it's far more valuable than anything they could offer. Meanwhile, Elena and I have been doing well these past few months. Initially, she was deeply hurt by what happened. I could see how much their rejection wounded her. But over time, she let it go. That's who she is, a kind, gentle soul who chooses to focus on the good in life. And I agree with her every morning. I wake up and look at her sleeping peacefully beside me, and I'm reminded of how lucky I am. We've always found strength in each other, no matter the obstacles. And we always will. I hope this will be my final update on this chapter of our lives. It's time to close the book on the pain, the betrayal, and the toxicity, on focus on the beautiful life ahead.